Well, it's the evening of August the 10th when I'm recording this, although I'm going to put it out tomorrow. I want to address a couple of big things that happened today, or for your point of view, probably previous days. First of all, of course, Governor Cuomo resigned in New York in order to prevent an impeachment, and I'm going to follow this up with some important comments on the bipartisan bill that was passed. And I'd like to give people a little different perspective on this, how to think about these things. Okay, so first the Cuomo thing. I mean, I'm not at all happy that he resigned. I would have liked to have seen him fight to the end and actually be impeached by and convicted by the New York state Senate. That'd have been fantastic because now the issue is largely over with. I mean, he walks away. The treatment of elderly people in the nursing homes, the 15,000 roughly that died due to his policies, that kind of gets swept under the rug. I kind of agree a little bit with what Tucker Carlson said tonight too. This was all an attempt to get rid of him because apparently he'd become kind of an embarrassment, and they want to make way for perhaps some more aggressive, progressive people. And in fact, so I don't see this at all as a win for us. I'd have much rather had him, in fact, even survive the whole process and had the Republican candidate running against him in the general election. It might give us a much better chance of winning. As it is now, they'll have a chance to bring in the lieutenant governor, and she has a chance to, establish herself, and then. And then, of course, the Attorney General and maybe Mayor de Blasio and some others may be running for governor too. So maybe they'll all mix it up and self-destruct. We can only hope. By the way, if you like these videos, please subscribe. Give me a like because it helps out with the algorithm, gets it out to other people. And if you want to get notified, click that bell, and then you'll get a notification when I post the video. So that's the other way I look at it. I look at it sort of differently. I mean, I have no love's lost for me for Cuomo. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I think the Democrats have actually, and Cuomo have managed to pull something off here that actually minimizes their damage. The only good thing in it is if those that consider the whole Cuomo issue a distraction from other things like the out-of-control spending that's going on with the Biden administration and Congress, well, then that may be a plus. Okay, in fact, let's get on to that. The passing of the bipartisan bill. I know everybody from former President Trump to almost all major conservative commentators have been railing against the Republicans and yelling rhino and all kind of things like this about this. But in my opinion, although I don't consider the bill to be good, in fact, there are things that I definitely don't like. I mean, but on the other hand, basically the core of the bill and core of the spending is the kind of infrastructure spending that even former President Trump himself wanted to do when he was in office, but was denied the opportunity because of the Democrats didn't want to give him a victory. And so now, of course, it's happening now. Now, why I'm not angry about it, and I think this is the other point, we need to think about politics with a little bit less emotion and a little bit more strategy. You can be pretty angry, but if you're fighting against a guy with strategy, sometimes that doesn't work out as good as you might want it to. So I think Mitch McConnell, on the other hand, is playing a very smart strategic game here. Perhaps some of the other people that are voting for it really do have less than, maybe not the most honorable motives. Perhaps probably mainly they just want a piece of the pork for their state. And other people are standing on principle that they don't like the spending. But when you hear most discussion, there's a strong tendency to conflate the bipartisan bill with this follow-on reconciliation budget bill, which is being touted as being a $3.5 trillion social spending program. And the two are really largely separate. And in fact, in my opinion, I don't see, if somebody knows, give me a comment and tell me why that's the case. I see in no way this is an enabling piece of legislation for the follow-on reconciliation bill. Perhaps it is, but I don't see this. To me, it's a totally separate issue. It is mostly infrastructure. Obviously, any major bill, you can point to bad things in any major bill that gets passed in a compromise. Every budget bill is full of pork. Every bill, every major spending bill is full of stuff you don't like. And if you're going to sit around wasting your time getting emotionally overwrought over what's inevitable, it just seems to me to be kind of a waste of time. So what I think is good here, what we have to realize, what McConnell has managed to do, is once the Democrats got the 50-50 Senate and had the vice president to break the tie, there was this looming threat that they would actually end the filibuster and then pass everything they wanted, including the H.R. 1 bill, which would kind of rig the elections, definitely corrupt them, potentially all kind of nasty stuff. But what's been achieved here is that certain senators have agreed to not do this. And part of, I think, that agreement is to work on them with a bipartisan bill, which serves their interests. Okay, not so much Biden's. I mean, Biden wants it, I guess, too. But I think the main thing is we look at somebody like Joe Manchin. Half of his voters voted for Trump. Okay, and let's look at Sinema. She's in a state where Trump came. Well, depending on what you want to believe, but it's a very 50-50 state. If you believe the official total, okay, Trump barely lost. If you believe Trump, he barely won. But in any event, I don't think it's a very, very tight purple state, and therefore, I think from her point of view, she's styling herself to be kind of the Democrat analog to what Senator McCain was to us. Now, I know Senator McCain was a real pain, and I fully agree with that. But we can hope that she becomes a bit of a real pain to the Democrats. Now, that doesn't mean that she's really on our side. Far from it. She wants to pass a lot of things we don't like. And that's a fact. But on the other hand, so far, she doesn't believe they should end the filibuster. And there she shows more sense than a lot of people, because she realizes that unless they can maintain total control after they do it, then the Republicans could get in if they were to win and obliterate a lot of things that they'd passed. And so I think from a practical point of view, I think that what we've got a situation here where hopefully this whole $3.5 trillion bill doesn't get passed as Bernie Sanders and the leftist Democrats want. Now, we can't guarantee this won't happen, and I'll look a little bad here later in the year if, in fact, it does happen full bore. But I know that there's serious objections on the part of certain Democrats to the degree of tax increase on corporations that are in the bill, and I think a lot of the spending may not be exactly preferred either. Especially there's a desire to in some way pay for it. Now, we know it's not going to get paid for if it gets passed. And whatever does get passed, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to really raise a lot of taxes to pay for this stuff. And sometimes, since they're focused on raising taxes on the wealthier segment and the business segment, that's the hardest group of people to actually collect the taxes on, because they have good lawyers and sneaky strategies. They usually find loopholes in the bills that somehow are put in there by their lobbyists, and it ends up the thing doesn't produce quite the degree of return that one might expect. So I think from that point of view, the whole thing is kind of a fiasco, and I agree with that. But hopefully what will happen is the best case scenario would be that since Nancy Pelosi won't pass the first bill unless the second one comes through to her liking, hopefully the second one will not come through to her liking. Of course, the best case was it doesn't go anywhere at all, that there is no big budget, pork-loaded social spending bill. That, I think, is a little too optimistic. I think the best you're going to do is paring it back significantly, hopefully significantly. If that's the case, then, maybe it'll be in a bit of a tolerance thing. The other thing to remember about this is that it's going to be spent over like a 10-year budget cycle. So this amount of money won't be spent before the next election. And some of these plans will probably take some time to really fully ramp up anyhow. I mean, there's sort of a buildup on any major program. So even though the money will be appropriated, sort of like a lot of the COVID money, all of it didn't get spent. So my thinking is if Republicans can keep things together, the key strategic things to prevent are keep the filibuster in place, prevent H.R. 1 from being passed, and prevent amnesty from being passed. or at least any significant amnesty, but hopefully no amnesty. If we can prevent those three things, then I think we're in a pretty good position if we win the 2020 election to actually start hacking away at what they've put in here anyhow. And so, to put it this way, sometimes it's really hard to cut established programs, but new programs that are in their infancy are much easier to attack. And obviously, the Republicans want to run on a program, I would presume, of cutting spending. And so, in a way, this is a little cynical, but hey, this is a spending we could probably cut. So, at any rate, that's the way I think from a strategic point of view we need to look at this. Remember, we don't want to put the Democrats in a position where they get all panicky and do something really dangerous. And I think if you really just use the approach of voting no, 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 no on everything, at some point they might have no choice but to unify and do what they could do, and just pass it by themselves and blow everything up. And by the way, as long as the filibuster remains in place, the Supreme Court is safe also from being loaded. So these are things that I think we need to think of, and I think this is what Mitch McConnell is really working on. So everybody wants to be all mad at Mitch because, well, he said some bad things about Trump, and Trump said some bad things about him, and okay. But understand that's just part of the way politics is. Each side has to establish that they're the one guy. They're the alpha animal. These guys have a high degree of ego, and that needs to be understood. So, okay, anyway, that's kind of my pitch for tonight. Well, I'm recording it tonight, but you'll probably get to see it starting tomorrow. And anyhow, so that's kind of it for now. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter, Gab, and Parler. Parler seems a little dead lately, which is kind of sad. I generally post most on Twitter, and so far I haven't been banned. Fingers crossed there. And so you keep up with my latest thoughts there, and the links to that are below in the description below. So anyway, I'll close this for now, and until next time.